Hello and welcome back to the Digital Marketing Podcast. My name is Ciaran Rogers.
I'm Louise Crossley.
And I'm Daniel Rolls.
And today we are talking about building community.
So we're going to talk building community because this is increasingly important as trust becomes a bigger and bigger asset for organizations. So we've spoken in previous episodes about trust is a bigger topic in terms of privacy, in terms of people being not so sure about what brands are saying because of fake data and all those things. So there's an element of that. There's also an element, if you're a part of a community, you feel part of something. And otherwise, what we're doing is we're broadcasting at people. We're doing a podcast, we're doing a YouTube channel, and it's all just shouting stuff at people. Whereas actually, if you can make, first of all, two-way conversation, so people will actually start to engage. But ideally, the ideal community is you're speaking to your audience backwards and forwards, but the community are also speaking to each other and getting something from each other as well. Because then you've got a huge amount of conversations going on and you're building that advocacy around the topic, your brand, whatever it is, as well. So that's the idea. I can see your face looking slightly dubious.
I'm holding
You're holding
back.
judgment a little
I'm holding
bit.
back for the moment. I've got a few things that I want to get off my chest about this.
All right, we'll go to this in a minute.
So why do people engage in communities in the first place?
Well, that's a really good point. And because it's like, we built your community so you can talk about target internet's e-learning. And people are like, I'm all right, cheers.
Yeah,
I'm not
over it.
I'm fine. I don't really want to. Whereas if you create a space that people can talk about their learning journey, their struggles with their marketing, the things they've learned from their marketing, want to share with other people, give them the opportunity to share best practice, that might be a community that's useful to people. If you look at the communities that tend to work, they're things that people are passionate about quite often as well. But there's loads of good examples of this. There's loads of terrible examples of this. And I would say, I haven't got a number, like 90% of communities fail. That stat was made up. But the point being that
You love making
I do like make up stats, right? The problem is when I put them in the book and then someone quotes them to me in a university paper as a peer-reviewed thing, it's like, that's a bit
I
dubious.
get emails from the team going, can you find out where this came from, please? I'm like, I don't know.
Daniel just made it up. I don't make stats. I should make this really clear. I don't make stats, so I've got them from somewhere. That one was made up, was my point. Okay. But yeah, well, okay, from now on, when we put stats in, we will quote where they come from in the show notes. Targetinternet.com podcast.
Yeah.
So the point being is that most, I would suggest, communities
I think you're right.
fail because it's like, why would I bother? Recent example, though, GA4.
Yeah.
Okay. Analytics Mania.
Yeah.
YouTube channel, loads of good tutorials. They have a Facebook group that's a community and it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay. There's loads of people. Well, it is brilliant, but there's also millions of people just throwing in really strange or random or obvious questions. So you need someone moderating it. Yeah. So the moderation becomes really important. The rules become important, what you should and what shouldn't say. Asking people to check back and see if this has really been answered, pointing them at that, and so on. So there's quite a lot around this. But what I do think is you build advocacy and you build community around those kind of things. And community is really important. We know this in our day-to-day lives. And when community is lacking in our day-to-day lives, we don't like it. So if you live in London, you very possibly don't know your neighbours. Okay, I'm sure someone else is going, I live in London, I know all my neighbours, it's a lovely community. Yeah, I'm from London originally. Generically, the point is, when you live in a village, you know everybody.
Yeah.
That's not inherently a good thing because everyone knows your business. Okay, so, it's a complicated subject, but I think from a marketing point of view, what you're trying to do is build so much engagement around you as the central place for something that actually that community can be useful to you, you can be useful to the community. So there's got to be a give and take.
It's a network.
Right.
Like all networks, its value is in the sum total of direct connections individuals have with each other and you.
Yeah.
And this is where, for me, a lot of the social media platforms get it wrong because it just becomes a one-stop broadcast. Because actually, to properly kind of curate all of these different conversations takes a lot of input. And so the resources are always lacking there. And I think, I had a really interesting experience in this a few years ago. So I volunteered to start a user group for Salesforce.com, non-profit users.
It was the Dreamforce stuff, right?
Yeah, I was at Dreamforce. It was back in, probably like
I remember you doing this.
2010, 2011. It was a long time ago. I was using Salesforce.com a lot. We were one of the biggest like non-profits. We were supported by Salesforce. And
Yeah, they give it away, don't they?
They do, yeah. They have like this fixed percentage of all of their revenue goes into the foundation, and they provide free product for charities. And I was one of those charities. So, quite interesting how they went about it. Salesforce.com said, "Would you like to host this?" And I think at the time I was drunk on the free champagne at Dreamforce. I was like, "Yes, I'll do it." Didn't really know what I was getting into. And literally, they said to me, "Look, we'll give you a budget for your travel expenses and to cover costs, but that's it. It's like we need volunteers to run this, and it's not us running it. We need you to build a community around this of actual users. So it's specifically for non-profits." And
this is fascinating. They basically given you a job, that helps promote their business, and you're keen and happy to do it.
Yeah.
There's a level of genius in this, okay?
But why was I happy to do it? Because they had given me so much, and they'd given my organisation so much completely for
money,
free.
time.
Yeah,
they've given you, but I think they've given you visibility as an individual and for your career from that point of view as well, and they're supporting a good cause.
They had just put like 18-foot billboards with my face on them up at I was kind of.
Can you imagine such a thing?
Yeah, it's heady days.
What a beautiful thing. Okay, but this is the point though: is that there's a value exchange gone on. They have given you something.
Yeah.
And it's provided some value, but you're keen to do it for free. Now, this is what I love.
Right. I wanted to give back.
That's the true community when you get into the point where someone will volunteer their time for free to do something because they're enjoying it, they're passionate, they're getting something out of it from that point of view. But
the experience of building that community was really interesting. There's a critical mass that I needed to get to. This is what I found. So we met initially. We had to agree as a group the purpose of the group and why we were meeting, how often we wanted to meet. So we agreed. And
so you were physically meeting up, weren't you?
Physically meeted up, yeah. Like begged, borrowed and stole like free space, tea and biscuits. Had about 12 people turn up for the first session. I think they'd emailed their whole database, invited everybody that was non-profit. We had 12 people turn up. We agreed we'd meet once every 6 weeks and that we'd run the whole thing on a LinkedIn group. Right, that was the preferred platform at the time.
Back in the day, they worked, right?
Back then,
I'll talk about that in a moment.
Yeah, so that's what we did. But it was felt very strongly that we did need to meet as a group because that really helped strengthen. And that was the key to this. If we just started an online platform or a Reddit group, I think we'd have died on its backside. Because actually, what you learn is when people are in a proper community like that, actually they all start to get to know one another and they all start to look at what everybody else is doing. And actually, the next meeting, I think we had about 18 people turn up. And the meeting after that, it doubled. Like we had about 36.
Right.
The meeting after
and you'd
that,
get that critical mass.
Once we got to about 30, like up until that point, it was a massive job because it was literally me doing everything.
And cajoling people.
I had to give every 6 weeks 2.5 hours worth of valuable presentations. I was killing myself learning stuff to put it in there.
Wow.
But what happened was other people within the room got to see the amount of credibility and praise that I got. And a number of them thought, I could do that. I want some of this. And I was like falling over myself together. Yes, please. Yeah, come on, do that. And we also found like commercial partners started to take interest as well. They were all desperate to get their airtime because they had a room full of their target leads prospectively in front of them. So they were happy to give very valuable insights. But this was the thing. But you needed that critical mass because you always get this kind of weird 80-20 principle where 80% of people will just lurk in the background and see whether it's worthwhile giving anything. Like everybody in your community is asking, make no bones about this, what's in this for me? Right. And that's why, you start a Reddit
even
group.
if it's subconsciously.
What's in it for me? What's in it for me? And actually, when that is answered, because they can see it rather than you just giving it that, going, oh, it'd be brilliant if you did this. No, I want to see physical evidence of this. Then it starts to snowball quite quickly. And I suppose to a certain extent, we found this with the podcast, didn't we? First, 18 months that we're doing this? Nobody really knew us from Addy.
It was absolute tumbleweed. Yeah. We'd just do episode after episode and it'd be like, have we got any listeners?
Yeah.
A couple. I think that's probably, me and you and some of our friends.
My mum listens.
Yeah, that's it. But it did kind of build, and it took a while. So that's a good point.
You get that critical mass and suddenly everything becomes easier. And actually everybody wants to be a part of it. In a way, that's still the power of Instagram, right? You want to be on Instagram because all your friends are on Instagram. But the moment everybody stops using it or starts moving on to other things, suddenly it's like,
loses its value.
Why would I want to do that?
Yeah.
What's in it for me?
Yeah.
So where does community live? Because there's a lot of places, as well as offline, online, that you can grow a big community.
Yeah, there are loads. And I think that the HubSpot example for me is the interesting one. So Dharmesh Shah, who's the founder and CTO at HubSpot, so he was the tech guy who is if you've ever seen him present, is a really, really funny public speaker. He's not, I don't think he ever naturally thought he'd be a great public speaker, but when he did it, he's really funny. But he was saying, look, community is important because if I speak to 100 people, that's 100 possible conversations. But if 100 people are speaking to 100 people, that's 100 to the power of 100. It's a phenomenal amount of conversation. So that's the power. So they then started their community, so community.hubspot.com. And I think it's a great example to look at of, bearing in mind, this is basically a CRM, customer relationship management platform. It does lots of other stuff as well. But it's software that they sell to you that's expensive. Okay? Salesforce, very similar kind of spaces. But they've managed to create this community by having physical events. So you've got inbound, there's big conference, everyone goes along and there's events, and I've spoken about this before. They have their online communities, they have meetups, specific groups of people. They have their academy for the training stuff. And then at inbound, they would create communities. They had like Black founders. They had like communities for every single kind of different group. And it would bring people together that had something in common.
You build a clan and then you build sub-clan groups.
Yeah, this was it. Okay, so and they've really committed to it. They've built platforms, events, all those kind of things. But the point was that you get this kind of exponential growth in conversations from that point of view. What amazed me about theirs is they've got their users going through and communicating, but they have their partners that sell their stuff for them as a community, waxing lyrical about how great it is as well. And then they have their podcast network. So they've got all of these podcasts that they've selected to basically be part of the HubSpot podcast network. Those podcasts then speak about each other. That's part of their contract. But they fund it and they pay them and things like that in some cases. And then you've got businesses they've acquired. If you look at Sam Parr and the stuff he used to do on the podcast, and then he sold that on and so on. So that the point being is you bring all these people together that have a vested interest, that are passionate about a topic that they've kind of engineered in a non-cynical way, I would say, to try and bring these people kind of together. And actually it works. And you can just see the level of advocacy out there. And their growth strategy is really clear. We can't grow as quickly as we want to, but it's trying to sell directly. So we're going to try and sell through partners. They'll say that up front. So I think it's an interesting example to look at. But where does it live? Oh, this is a good question. And I've got a lot of opinions on this. You've got some very strong ones, I know. So let's just start with that LinkedIn group thing. Used to be LinkedIn group for a B2B business. What a brilliant place for a thing to live.
But you know what? There's two separate things here, they're quite slightly different, but miles apart, right? So where does the community live? That's where you're going to physically set up, the engagement pod, I suppose. And
that's a good point.
There's also, where does it exist?
Yeah. Okay.
So it exists in, let's be frank, the hearts and minds of the people taking part.
Within the physical network of people.
Yeah. That's where the community is. So actually, all these hubs do is they just kind of spin things up. They give you, they give it structure. And
isn't it the town hall?
Yeah, it is. It is that. And there's definitely a real power in having actual face-to-face element to it. I mean, if you imagine how hard was it to get new projects off the ground when everybody was just on Zoom? Like, it much harder. Let's face it.
Yeah.
Even within small groups, that's how people work. And actually, people want to quickly establish where they're at within the pack and the pecking order and what have you. And that's hard to do in a virtual environment. So yeah, but that's a really important distinction, because actually that's where very often it goes wrong. Like, I can build it and they will come. No, they won't, because their hearts and minds are not in it, and therefore it's just like a deflated balloon.
Okay, quick personal question. Okay, catch you. I haven't prepared anyone for this, by the way, so this might go horribly wrong. Are there any communities online, groups, things you're interested in? So I'm thinking for you, like storytelling.
Yeah.
I'm thinking cooking interesting and strange, peculiar things. Those kind of things that you're kind of passionate about. Do you engage online anywhere with those people? Maybe it's email, maybe it's a WhatsApp, maybe it's actually a forum online. So the Vikings that you go and visit in the Northern Hebrides, whoever it is, how do you engage with those people?
Over the phone.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Like
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Because they're very traditional storytellers.
Yeah, but occasionally via email and stuff. I joined a social media community last year, back in April, and it was all done on I can't think of the name of it. It's like an online chat app.
Okay.
It was all done via that, and I just didn't get on. Like, I tried really hard to engage, but actually what I found was everybody there was at a very beginner level. And so actually I was just plowing a lot of time into helping.
So it didn't work otherwise if there was an imbalance in the group. There's too many people at one level and too many people servicing them.
Plus, they did have face-to-face like screen meetings and stuff, but I could never make those because they're in the States and they were always like 8
time zones.
10 o'clock.
We have this for our webinars that if we don't do them in the right time for the UK and for Asia and for the US, it causes a problem. So that's an interesting consideration.
So I limped along for about 3 months because I felt good about being a part of it and what I wanted to help, but I realised, no, this isn't. This is crazy. It's because it was costing me money to be a part of it. So I exited out. I'm very excited. You know, I'm learning Welsh at the moment. I'm really excited because that online group meet every Monday.
And where do you meet?
In Zoom.
In a Zoom, right? Okay, fine.
And I start this Monday, so this is like progression on from just Duolingo, which is what
learning
I'm
on your own
so far.
Bit terrifying as well.
Oh, I'm so excited about it, and for me, like because there's something very clear in it for me. Like I need an opportunity to practice my Welsh because actually, unless you're using the languages, practice.
You slipped into.
Yeah, I did not. I really did not. And no, I'm not going to do that.
Next episode, we're going to ask him to do some Welsh. He's going to introduce it in Welsh.
Not really. I'm just sort of trying to understand it at the moment. But it's because I'm into it. Like, and because there's something in it for me. And that's the thing. If the nodes of your network, if any one node, there's nothing in it for them, then they just won't bother.
Yep.
Like, Louise, I bet you've got a Facebook account, but do you use it a lot?
Not really.
And why?
But so the main place that I find community is within TikTok.
Okay.
And a lot of it comes to do with consistency and people, a lot of personal branding, but people using their niche and building upon that. Because quite often, so for example, if there's, someone who consistently, and this is just based on what I like, but some people who might do, a daily get ready with me, and then at the end of it, they give you 2 outfit options and you help them choose the outfit option. If someone likes that, then the next time it appears on their feed, it's almost like comforting because they're seeing the same thing again and again, and everyone interacts and everyone comments, and there's loads of people who build upon that personal brand, and they really use that niche to elevate them.
That's interesting.
And loads of people comment and loads of people get involved, and then brands have completely grown.
Yeah, so this thing, it's a personal brand, but it's wrapped around it some people that feel, oh, that represents me, that stands for me, and then suddenly you have community and it comes back.
I don't know if you've heard of, there's this girl called Amelia who does Chicken Shop Date on YouTube.
Chicken Shop Date.
Chicken Shop Date.
I'm getting the feeling from that reaction, this is new to you.
This is very new to me. I'm open to this.
So
it's 2023, I'm going to embrace it.
When she was younger, she used to love just chatting about with her friends, and she used to publish it in her sort of youth magazine. And she went to her friends and she went, what's different about me? What can I elevate on? And they just went, well, to be honest, you're really awkward. And she took that, and now she famously interviews celebrities, but in her awkward manner. She takes them to like a chicken shop in London, and she's really awkward with them, and she asks them questions, but everyone loves it because it's her niche, and she's completely built on it, and everyone comes back to her videos and loves them again and again. And now she, interviews people on red carpets and like does all these interviews, and she's got a huge net worth.
Right.
But she's completely taken what makes her individual.
So this comes like content marketing, uniqueness, things passionate about. I said for years, I was never a particularly great public speaker, but because I'm passionate about the topic, I could get away with absolute murder. Whereas other public speakers would be so polished and so excellent, but it didn't resonate because you couldn't feel the enthusiasm. So I think there's a huge amount in that as well. So maybe let's look at some of these platforms in practical terms. And let's just start with us, right? We've got the podcast, it's broadcast. So we need some back and forth. We need to do that. For us, email has been the most successful thing, right? You create an email newsletter. You say it's exclusive for people that do the podcast, targetinternet.com/newsletter, by the way. You get loads of good stuff. There's a value exchange in that. But also, if you reply to it, it comes to my inbox. People still don't believe this. Every email that gets responded to on that email list comes to my inbox. And once every 2 weeks or whatever it is, we send an email. Bit of a nightmare, but also huge opportunity. This is our customer speaking to us. Okay, so if you're like, oh, I don't want to speak to my customers, then there's a problem.
And it works for you because there's a symbiosis there, isn't there?
Yeah.
So people want access to you to pick your brains, to shoot the breeze, but you desperately recognise the value of having access to the very people we try and help.
So what I always find, someone responds to the email thinking doesn't really go through to his inbox. It does. They ask me a question. I'll spend a fair bit of time answering it, give them a detailed response, point them at some resources. From then on, that person invariably becomes an advocate. They'll share our stuff more. They're nice about us. They're really keen to have conversations.
But it's you, because it's one-on-one, you have complete control over that relationship then as well.
Yeah. And the reality is, because email and podcast, we can control those things. It doesn't live in Facebook. It doesn't live in LinkedIn, where we have no real control over that. Organic reach, are people even seeing our stuff anymore? Is an important point. So, for example, Facebook groups, still really heavily used, can be effective, can also get spam full of stuff. There's crazy people posting things. It's a bit chaotic. LinkedIn groups, we've got this huge LinkedIn group for the Digital Marketing Podcast, and it just died because people still, this amazes me, people still ask to join every month. We'll have dozens of people joining up to the group.
Yeah.
We publish our stuff there, but the problem is we probably get 100 things a week, people going, get rich quick, and we just
they're trying to do
disapprove.
You have to manage them well.
Yeah. So it doesn't get a huge level of engagement. And then when I ask people that are members of the group, do you think a LinkedIn group is a good place to engage? They all said no. So they're using it to receive stuff they like. That's okay. Then there's some other ones that are kind of discussion forums like Reddit. Well, if you haven't been on Reddit's the Wild West. I mean, there's language that you might not even understand. People can be pretty horrid. There is very, very I wouldn't send my son on to Reddit at any stage because there's like pretty kind of strong stuff on there as well. So it's not universally good. Discord. This is an interesting one. I said Discord earlier on, and you said
never heard of it.
Yeah, right. So it's gaming and crypto. And I'm going to get flamed now because people on Discord are really, really like, no, it's
very dare you.
We use it for all these different things as well. But it's a passionate user base, but it's a very specific demographic and group and those kind of things.
So their niches work.
Yeah, niches work. It works really well for those kind of people. So you've got these kind of things. So email for us was kind of now a couple of platforms that are trying to give you a solution, but I have some kind of challenges and so on and so forth. So first of all, Mighty Creator is an interesting one. Mighty Creator allows you to create an app for your community where you can publish stuff, where you can have chats, and it's branded and it's beautiful, that kind of thing. I immediately have a problem with this in that, do I have to then download an app specifically for your community? Am I going to bother? Because I'm already on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Do I want something else? The value's got to be pretty high for me to bother to install your app.
That was the problem for Google Plus, wasn't it?
Right.
Where everyone already had Facebook.
Yeah.
Why do I need the Google?
In
Facebook?
hindsight, Google Plus was excellent.
The interface was so much better than anything else out there. But
and you could separate into circles.
It's happy days. Yeah.
But there you go. So I think you can do this. If you've already got an app that's useful, and then it's useful to me on a day-by-day basis, then maybe I'll continue to use it. So, for example, if I shop in Tesco, Sainsbury's, Waitrose, wherever it is, I'm using their app regularly, I might then use that for tracking calories or fitness, or because I can then do my shopping in there and I could connect it, and maybe I would communicate with other people because it's something I use on a day-by-day. But otherwise, there's too much friction, I kind of feel.
It's an extension to that classic phrase, build it and they will come.
Yeah,
I think we should all rephrase that. Build it and they will come, unless someone else has already found a way of scratching that itch that they're using.
Or it's too difficult to get to the itch and I'd rather live with the itch. It's that kind of thing, okay? The one that's an interesting one here, and I think this deserves more credit than it probably gets, is Guild. That one of the problems you've got is
What is that?
Okay, so Facebook own Facebook and you've got no control. LinkedIn, no control. Privacy, there's all sorts of issues around these different platforms. Guild, Ashley Friedland, that used to run e-consultancy, sold that. He went into a number of loads of different interesting things that he's doing. But he kind of part owns this, I believe, if not majority. I don't know the share ownership. But basically, it allows you to create communities for your organizations, kind of like chat forums, discussion groups, all those kind of things.
Like a message board.
Yeah, but you've got complete control over it. You've got complete control over privacy. You can moderate all those kind of things, but there's no algorithm to filter, and there's all sorts of guarantees and promises they give you. The only kind of challenge I have with it is that critical mass thing again of, unless everyone's got it, persuading the value, and we will get Ashley on. We'll ask Ashley if he wants to come and give us some comments, or just at least give us some comments on why he thinks that's kind of so valuable as well. I've used it and it works really well. And actually, there are communities on there, like the digital marketing community, that they're inviting people to that are a certain level of seniority, that the value is the network.
Right.
So I think actually that's the difference. So I think there's something big there, maybe, is to grow in the future. You can embed it into other things and so on as well. So we'll put that into the show notes, targetinternet.com/podcast. So that's another approach. The one that I discovered when I was at the Inbound conference that I had a chat with these guys and I was really interested was commonroom.io. And Common Room basically says your community might be in Discord, it might be in Reddit, it might be in email, it might be in Twitter. You will have advocates. you will have influencers that are part of that audience. And basically, you can't control where they are because they're going to be where they want to be. So what this does is it looks at all the people that are using all of your platforms and it works out who are your advocates. And it says, how active are they? What are the themes of conversation that are coming out? And it comes back to Ciaran's point is that your community doesn't live somewhere. It is a thing that is people. And what it really says is that we're just going to look at all those different platforms. We're going to give you the metrics, and therefore you can identify those 5 people are advocates. We need to engage with them. Those people aren't happy. How could we speak to them? And actually, rather than saying a community lives in a particular place, it's saying community is the sum of the kind of engagement you get that you actually have a proper relationship with. And it basically gives you loads of metrics and ability to contact and engage with those people as well. So I think that common room approach, and there's some other tools that are doing it, I liked what they were doing, is probably a sensible approach, unless there is a platform like if you're in crypto or gaming, it's going to be obviously Discord is a good place for you to go. It might be if you're a certain level of seniority, then obviously Guild, there's a particular group that's the ideal place to kind of be and so on as well. The nice thing about Guild is it relies on trust to some extent, is that you are not going to come in here and promote your own stuff unless you've been asked to talk about it and things like that. So there's a good etiquette kind of standing up, and they're quite good at kind of dealing with that as well. What I think that leads us on to a little bit is the advocacy piece. For so long, we've talked about influencers. Who are those people that have access to the audience that we want? Okay. Whereas advocates can be people that just say nice things and engage with us, and they don't need to be highly influential, because an online review doesn't really matter who it comes from. An influencer leaving a review is obviously great, but you don't notice that in reviews. So there's something about building that, but it doesn't happen by accident. So we had a recent thing where we were going to do some usability testing, and we went out to our email list and said, would you be interested? And I thought I think we emailed like 3,000 people. And I thought, if we get like 10 people, because I was asking for an hour of their time, okay? 10 people come back and say, yes, that would be brilliant. I think we had like 60 or 70 emails of people going, oh yeah, I'd happily give up that time. Based on the fact this was in a particular time zone as well. And I was like, okay, well, wait a minute. Those 60, we're going to need 10 people. So, do I go back to 60 people and say, yeah, thanks, no? It's like, oh man, that would be an awful thing to do. Right. We need to speak to those people directly. We need to say to them, we'll give you this thing. We'll invite you to this. We want to get you back in the future. But suddenly those people I've got a relationship with, and we're having these conversations. Yeah, that's it. That's it. And I think that if you look at business success, I still believe that's on personal relationships. And, why do I use, if I use a faceless brand, okay, well, let's say not faceless. If I use a really well-established brand, why do I use that brand? It's because I kind of trust it. So they've made some sort of personal connection. It's a lot easier to make connections with people than it is with a brand. So leveraging our brand ambassadors internally becomes an important thing.
That's why personal branding is so important as well.
Right.
Because people communicate more with faces.
Yeah, 100%. What was the stat? I think I quoted, this is like one I made up. You're 12 times more likely to, okay. So the point being is you are much more likely to engage with an individual than you are a brand. Okay. So this comes from a study the CIM did, and it was just saying, look, in LinkedIn,
source
chartered industry marketing, lots of stuff, that essentially, if you go to LinkedIn and target internet post something, we'll get a certain level of engagement. If you post something, or I post something, you post something, it's loads more likely to get engagement because people go, oh, it's Louise. That's brilliant. I like Louise. I'm going to respond to that. I'm going to engage with it.
People that know you are going to respond, aren't they?
And they're keen for you to succeed. Yeah. Right. That's the difference, right? So when you post, I've been promoted to this new kind of job title, everyone's like, yay! And there's just like this pouring on of kind of everyone going, oh, what a brilliant thing. So I think it comes back to human connection, trust, not trying to force it to live in a particular place that might grate and create kind of friction from that point of view. But also assume that creating community is not easy, and that getting it right is very tricky.
It's like pushing a bus along the flat, right? It's extremely hard to begin with.
I see.
Yeah, if you've
I was waiting with this.
But once you get it moving, you don't have to put a lot of energy into it. That's the thing. But enormous amount of energy needs.
That was a good analogy.
That was a good one.
And it wasn't rude. We didn't have to edit anything out. There was
I was
no
a bit
swearing.
worried when I could tell you were thinking about it.
Both of us tensed.
It was worse in my head.
Yeah, but you calmed it down.
I'm getting there.
Tend to
That was
flinch.
good. That was good.
It's 2023. Come on, I'm getting with the party.
So anyway, community, really important, not easy to achieve. Don't try and force it to live in a particular place, but huge power in it if you can kind of get it right. All of those links and everything within the show notes as normal, targetinternet.com/podcast. Take a look. We'd like to hear from you. about specific, just answer this question if you can for me, communities that you engage with, where and why.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's about, I've got a Rottweiler puppy and therefore there's a Rottweiler group that I go onto, or whatever it might be. I'd just be interested what the topic is and where you engage and why you think that's useful to you.
I'd really love to know, like, have you found ways of getting your community to work? Like, we've shared with you some of the ways that we found, but that would be hugely useful. It's a topic that
we will share them.
Yeah,
and we're
really
happy to reference you if you want us to as well.
Yeah, if you've got a good enough story, we'll get you on the show and let's talk about it.
That's it. That's it. Brilliant. All right. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again on the Digital Marketing Podcast.
Please subscribe for more videos like this and visit targetinternet.com for more free digital marketing resources.